Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvarai.
Amen.
Okay, good morning, Elisheva. Thank you so much for joining on this fine, beautiful Thursday morning as we jump back into our journey through Sefer Likutei Moharan with Torah and Dalet. Be'ezras Hashem, today's shir is sponsored by Reb Bernard Bollag, nishmas, his father, Rabbi Mari Moshe Israel ben Yaakov, also by Yitzchak Gedalia ben Ilanit for the schus of Menashe Gabriel ben Chava and Avram Shlomo ben Ilanit, and by Zev Klein, nishmas, his parents of Bryndel bas Simcha and Ya'akov ben Yeshעיהו, also for shidduchim for Yehudis Adina bas Elisheva, Rochel, Dovid ben Fayga, Kayla, Yonatan, Shimon ben Hadassah, Ronit, Netanel ben Meechal, Mahnaz, Dovid ben Yael, Noach, Avraham ben Raizel, Zev ben Bryndel, and all the singles of Klal Yisrael. Also dedicated to schus for Yeshעיהו for Yeshua ben Chaim Miriam, along with all of Klal Yisrael, the Chayalim, Yoshua Eretz Yisrael, Yidden all around the world should be protected, and we should only hear B'suras Tovos in the schus of our learning together this morning, the Siyata D'Shmaya.
Amen.
Okay, so we continue with Hashem's help in Ois Vav. Yesterday, we were learning about how music is incredibly important for being able to overcome the Koach HaMedameh. Music can open our minds and elevate our Koach HaMedameh. And we mentioned that the Rebbe doesn't say levatel Koach HaMedameh, he says lahachnia Koach HaMedameh, because we don't want to be mevatel the Koach HaMedameh. In fact, it's really impossible at all for a human being to exist as a human without a Koach HaMedameh. There's no such thing, right? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world in such a way, like we said in the beginning of Shir yesterday, where we need to use our Medameh. We absolutely need to use our Medameh, because all we're given is the pure facts. And what brings those facts to life is the capacity to present narrative, right? To project narrative onto those facts. And the question is, which medameh are we using, right? Are we using a koach medameh that's not mivurar, in which case we interpret everything negatively, we interpret everything nihilistically, we interpret things in a lowly, impure way? Or do we have a purified koach medameh which allows us to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu in everything, right? To live lives of authentic emunah, and that's the open Koach HaMedameh that can actually allow us to transcend our seichel and access higher truths. That journey, like we learned, is going to be mediated by music, which is a completely different thing. We said music contextualizes. Music can enable us, especially if played by a person like we learned who's Yodea Nagin, who knows how to create melodies that are holy and melodies that are productive and effective, can separate the ruach ra, which is ruach atzvos, the ruach of ruach necheya, the sad, depressed, lowly, negative ruach, and can replace it with positive energies, right? And the music is able to evoke those holy feelings and to bring a person beyond their mind into a world of dimyan that is going to enable them to then come back into the world of seichel, look at the facts, but to contextualize things in a holy way, right? And that's the highest seichel there is, right? To sort of transcend the seichel and really enter into the world of emunah, like Rabbi Nachman teaches in Sichos Haran as well. So that's what we were learning yesterday. We learned that it had to do with the Adayim, biyad neviim adameh, that had to do with Simcha, usemachtem b'chol mishlach yedchem. And then when the Menagin played for the Navi, Vatihi alav Yad Hashem. What's the Yad? Is connected to Ruach. Asher biyadai nefesh kol chai beruach kol b'sar ish. So we have all these different sukkim that make reference to Yad, that link Yad to the aspect of Dimyan, Yad Nevi Adameh, to Simcha, right? Usmachtem kol mishlach yadchem, to Ruach, biyadcha afkid ruchi, and then Vatiyallah Yad Hashem, that enables the prophet to access this realm of simcha, this realm of freedom, this realm of an open mind, right? Of a mind that's not stuck in what the lower dimyan, which has its achiza in seichel, drags it downward, causes us to look at the world in a much lower way. It can elevate our whole consciousness. We can look at the world in a positive way, in an optimistic way, in a hopeful way, in an open way, in a loving way. And that's what we have been learning. So we jump back into Gam Tzarech, which is toward the at the bottom, I guess.
No,
V'zamanagin. Okay, one line earlier, toward the beginning of the first column on page Samach Beis Amud Beis, and the tzaddik says the following things: Chusay Yagin Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael Amen. V'zamanagin tzarich shia yodea nagin kaniska la'el. So we had learned that the tzaddik who's playing music like this, who's composing music like this, needs to be a Yodea Nagim. But it isn't just that the person playing the melody needs to know how to do this avodah, and how to compose and how to curate, which is also part of it, music that can evoke holy feelings, but the kli itself needs to be b'shleimus. The instrument itself needs to be shalem in some, I don't know if it's a physical way or a spiritual way. There has to be something unique about the kli, which we talked about yesterday. Kohen Levi Yisrael, Yitin L'cha Kol V'Vecha, Yesh Li Kol. All Rashi Tevis Kli, but it has to be shalem so that the ruach that emerges from it is only the ruach taiva, and it isn't just taiv and ra meuravim bebas achas. Yalkein sarch shia yodea nagin. That's where the das comes in. Das means havdalah. I mean das havdalah minayin, which is of course why we make the bracha of or havdalah diaraisa in chayin in hadas, according to the Rambam is diaraisa. Begam shia kli shemenagnin alav. Shalim, the kli should be shalim kadesh yuchel varav ulchavin hanigun b'shleimus karoi. So the nig in the melody is able to emerge properly. Shehu b'chinas mashem b'var haruach toiva, the ability to clarify only the positive energies, the holy energies. Shehu b'chinas simcha, which is an energy of joy, b'chinas ruach nevuah, an energy of prophecy. Min atzvas ruach, to be separated from the Atzvas Ruach Shu Ruach Ra Kaniska La'el, which is the lower depressive spirit that we learned about yesterday. Because when a Kli is incomplete, or the person who's playing upon that Kli doesn't know how to do this avodah, and doesn't know how to adequately play this instrument, both physically, practically, and also in a spiritual sense. Alav namar kol rucha yotzik sil. The pasuk in Meechal says, kol rucha yotzik sil. The sil just lets all, is just full of hot air. Like is just kol rucha is letting everything out, right? Yotzik sil. And again, that sil we already learned the pasuk sil. Also in Meechal when we learned moitzi diba huksil, right? So those two things are connected. Right, the ksil is also living in a world of lashon hara. What's the lashon hara? Is the Koach HaMedameh. Where did the Koach HaMedameh go? In the mouth of the pi shoyna halachas, right? The one who is teaching halacha. What did we say about his psakim? It's mu'uravim toiv ra. It's just that the ra is mizgaber over the toiv, right? So it could be the person who's living in a consciousness of lashon hara also sees good things, but it's all mixed up together. He's not isolating the good and choosing consciously to leave the ra behind. So it's the same idea. Moitzi dibahu ksil and kol rucha yotzi ksil. Same idea. Dainu shemoitzi kol ruach bebas achas. Right? The whole world just comes out. It's all a mix. Arva choshech mishtamshim be'erbuvia. V'azai bevadei ein nivna hanigin. That's no way to build a melody. When there's no selective property and it's just you're sitting and smashing on like this on all the keys of the keyboard at once. Terrific, right? Are there good notes in there that if isolated themselves could play Vizakeni or some other beautiful melody? Of course, right? They're all there, but if you don't do the process of selection, that's very, very important. The selectivity is very crucial because our mind is programmed. We have a Yetzer Tov, we have a Yitzhar, we have a Neshama, we have a Nefesh. We have a Neshama, we have a Nefesh. It came to me yesterday, and I was thinking about the pasuk. Hashem ha'elisa min sha'ol, right? Ha'elisa min sha'ol nafshi, right? Ha'elisa min sha'ol nafshi. The Rosh Tevis of ha'elisa min sha'ol nafshi is neshama. Ha'elisa min sha'ol nafshi. Like we say, nefesh and neshama are in a battle all the time. The nefesh is in sha'ol. Right? The nefesh, the lower part of the human being, is at the end of the funnel of consciousness, incredibly constricted, not functioning with full expansivity. It's sha'ol. Ha'elisa min sha'ol nafshi is neshama, right? I mean, the neshama is on the other side of the spectrum. That's why it's in the Rosh Teva. It's not even in the words. It's like, it's so expansive. Huh?
Opposite.
Yes, right? And so it is what is drawing my nefesh up to a higher place. Hashem ha'elisa min sha'al nafshi. So here we have the same idea over here. The goal is to be able to get out of the medameh, the sitra achra, or the medameh that's anchored in the nefesh, and Hashem ha'elisa min sha'al nafshi, to take that nefesh and to bring it up into the world of neshama, which again we're learning over here is also a dimyan, or there's always dimyan, but it's on the higher level. This is something reminiscent to what we learned in the Torah of seichel and dimyan. I'm not going to flip through and find it now. Embarrassed to say that I don't remember which Torah that was. We have to go back and look at it. But over there we learned, if you remember, that seichel and dimyan existed in the construct of makif and pnim. Remember we had this thing? Right? You always have to go from dimyan to seichel. But then it emerges that seichel is itself dimyan klape, the next level of seichel, just like every pnim is makif, right? Klape the level before it, right? So what to me right now is my integrated consciousness. The next level is makif. Once I integrate that, there's going to be a new makif. That becomes panim, then there's a new makif. And we learned that in this very deep way, makif and panim are identical. It's our own experience as we move through this whole ocean of consciousness. Same is true for seichel and dimyan. And it has to be that way. In other words, the seichel from my level also has an element of dimyan. It's just that it's a clarified dimyan that's going to enable me to use my Koach HaMedameh as a human being without all of the information to be able to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I don't know. I never know. Right? My dimyan, in terms of my emunah, could be solidified, strengthened, concretized. But it's still, okay, and then there's a higher madrega, and then we go and go and go. And then I say, no, now I know that there's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You mamish know. You believe very strongly. You don't know, unless you're a Navi. Right, in which case that's a different thing, and maybe it's not a different thing. Right, maybe the Navi was just clarified his medameh to such a point where he mamish, was de facto just like memela channeling messages from beyond because he was living beyond. So, but this is how it goes, right? Pnim to makif, it's the bechina of keser, also being malchus. Right, this is the secret of the way that the spiritual journey works. But when we make that journey, Hashem ha'elisa min sha'al nafshi, to take the nefesh and to bring it up to neshama, it has to be with a process of selectivity. Has to be very precise. We're playing a melody. I mean, we are actively choosing in our mind, which is our neshama, to suppress the nefesh, which is the lower part, and to actively select. I'm choosing to look at this. I'm not choosing to look at that. I don't mean in Shemir Seinai, that also. I'm choosing to focus upon this positive point, and that's what I'm going to take from this. That's what I'm choosing to look. There could be millions of other data points. I'm playing a melody. I know that there are other keys on this keyboard. I am actively choosing not to press them right now. If I want to make a chord, focus on 3 positive elements. That's a chord. Right? Want to make an extended chord? I can add another note. I want to make it a 7th. Then you make a melody. Right? So there has to be the process of selection. If that process is not consciously done, a person thinks they're going to make a melody, but just like, I'll try to find the positive, it's not going to work. It's an avoida. It's a precise avoida with like hilchas, birur, hilchas ayin tova. It's not an arbitrary, I'll be semi-conscious of it. It is literally no less an avoida than being trained to play an instrument. Mamish and avoida, with techniques like playing. Okay, keyboard is particularly, but I guess finger picking also on guitar. The yadayim. But not that it should be all at once, because the Rebbe says, "Kol rucha yoitzik sil dainu shemoitzik kol ruach b'basachas v'azay b'vaydai ein nivne hanigan." Like you cannot build a melody like that. Ki ikar ni'imas hanigan nasai de berur haruach. A very beautiful, precious, sweet melody is on account of the selection of different notes, gesund and stark. When you put them all together, that's a beautiful melody. That's a beautiful melody. Shuhu ha'avir shemishal hakol kidu lechach me'anagina, which is the different vibrations that have to work exactly together. As Chachmas Hanagina tells us, there are certain notes that fit together. It's mathematics, right? It's a very scientific study, this study of music. It's incredibly precise, and everything fits. There's structures, our chord structures, right? Everything. So it has to be very precise. Like we said, the construction of a melody is on account of selecting the positive notes, the positive vibes, the positive sounds, frequencies, right, away from the negative frequencies. When a person just plays the whole guitar, I think with string instruments it's particularly acute, because if you play all the strings on a guitar or a harp at the same time, a harp might have like a beautiful sound. Guitar doesn't really. It's not tuned to sound. It's not going to sound nice. It's just like it's tuned so each one is very precise in order to enable you to play chords properly, right? But just strumming on a guitar doesn't make the nicest sound, right? Those 5 strings together, 6 strings, 5 strings, doesn't sound nice together. How do you produce chosen notes? By pressing. It's an active lachatz, like it's an active focus that you're putting on these notes in order to select from them the notes that you want, right? And it can even hurt your finger, like it could develop calluses. Like it's an avoida. It's an avoida. Maybe this is the aspect of getting closer in proximity, so that we don't allow the dimion of richuk, right, to ruin the picture. It's like when you stand at a distance from the guitar and just strum it, it's not going to make a nice sound. When you get super close up to the notes, you mamish become intimate. You press your fingers on the notes. Which again, metaphorically means when you look at a Jew, you push deeper. That's the oid ma'at ve'in rasha v'zbanat mekayim ve'inenu azamar l'lekai ba'oidi. You push, right? You don't just stand at a distance. You get close. Then you can create the note that you want. Right? So then, the line before, who then you haven't selected your notes through the active process of selection, the active process of pressing up against them to be able to elicit their beautiful tone. Then the melody isn't built, the simcha isn't built, and then the medameh isn't being used in a holy way. Right? Reb Yitzchak Berditchev had the greatest Koach HaMedameh in the world, because arguably he was the most naive person ever. Right? I think about all the stories. It wasn't the emet, right? It wasn't the MS. I wrote an article about this years ago. It wasn't mamish MS. Right, that famous story where he sees a person at the end of davening, cleaning his wagon. Right, Reb Yitzchak says, "Gaval, like you can't even clean the wagon without davening." That wasn't what's happening. Right, the guy's trying to get out of davening earlier and save himself time. That wasn't what's happening. But Reb Yitzchak had a holy Koach HaMedameh. Reb Yitzchak said, "Well, you might not think that's what's happening, but pnimius, that's mamish what's happening, because that is what this part of him." That's wanting to get out of davening early, so he's doing this while he's davening, is not the yid part of it. That's some other. That's not him mamish, right? Him mamish is a person who b'pnimius already feels shaychus with this activity, because be'emes, if he could, then at 5:48 in the afternoon, when mincha is only at 7 o'clock, he would also be wearing talis and tefillin and davening while he cleans his wagon randomly during the day, because that's what a yid is. Reb Yitzchak had a purified Koach HaMedameh. There were tzaddikim that stopped at the external, and there was an avodah there too, because Musar has its place, right, and guidance has its place, and there was truth to that. But then there's an even deeper truth. A metaphor for this that I often think about is the aron, right? There were gold on the outside, and some tzaddikim just looked at that, right? And you see, let's focus on tzaddikim. You see Jews who are doing the right thing, they only chose to relate to Yidden like that. Then there were Yidden, there were tzaddikim, like the Kotzker, for example. Right? He wasn't buying the gold on the outside, and he wanted to lay bare the wood, right, on the inside. Right? And the Kotzker says, oh, what do you know, it's all fake, it's not real, you know. So let's address the fact that the Pnimis, there's still a lot of work to do. And then there were tzaddikim, I would say, like the Berditch, like Rabbi Nachman, who said, yes, Kotzker, that there's work to do, but there's also a golden box on the inside. Right? There's also a layer beyond that. And that's the ultimate truth. That's the ultimate emes. So you need Dimyan on all sides, right? The question is, what our Koach HaMedameh is availing us, and whether it's bringing us to live in a world of simcha, in a world of compassion, in a world of love, in a world of positivity. That's really what it comes down to, because simcha is the most important thing. Optimism, hope, positivity is the most important thing. So says the Heilige Rebbe, Teitze Ruchai, the human being's ruach, leaves him. Yashav la'admasai. One day we're going to return to the earth. One day we're going to return to the earth from which we came. La'admasai, says the Heilige Rebbe, can mean earth. It could also be gesundheit, a bechina of haina bechinas hamedameh. Teitze Ruchai, Yashav la'admasai. So the Rebbe sees like la'ad masai dalet mem is midam dam. The Rebbe sees as the shirish of Koach HaMedameh, dimyan is dalet mem, right? Which is also, by the way, dam. What's dam? Ki adam hu hanefesh. Right? So dimyan and nefesh are very related, right? So we learn over here, says the Heilige Rebbe, ve'inich na medameh. I'm sorry, I knew that means and all of a sudden there's just a whole bunch of phenomena, but we haven't done the holy medameh process beyond seichel to be able to select this and that, and we don't have technique with our game. As a chayzer v'shav al medameh, teitze ruchai, you're just going to fall back to dimyan, the unholy dimyan. Because we haven't been able to select and to clarify the ruchais toivos, the yotzi kol ruach hama'or of toivara, and all the ruach that's mixed up with toivara is going to go out at once. However, when we have the expertise of knowing how to play the instrument of reality, like we learned, when we have a kli, when we have that consciousness, right, when we know how to be oile v'yored, and it's oile v'yored dafka, that's bein ba'aliyah, bein b'yerida, that's bein b'ratzeh, bein b'shayv, oile v'yored. When a person is able to experience life and to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu in everything, bein b'yerida, shamata, right? I'm sorry, to always embrace the reality and the circumstances. There's an avoida here. I think that's the key point. There's always an avoida. Avoida means there's something to do. There's something to do. There's hope. There's hope. There's meaning. There's joy. There's always avoida. Always. You find yourself in any situation, any place, with any person, at any time. There's avoida there for you. It's not stam. That's the energy of Amunah. You don't happen to have ended up here. There's a reason. That's Amunah, right? There's a reason. There's meaning here. That's called selecting the Nekudas Toivos, right? Those holy notes, the Toiv from within the Ra, Oile v'Yored. So kishiyesh lebechinas yad haniskel el hamalaki to mavar bechinas arach tovim and arach ra azai, then azai machnia hamadame, then we can subjugate the medameh, which is the lower, the dam, the nefesh, and we can lift the nefesh halisa min sha'al nafshi neshama to the higher medameh, to seichel, which itself is a bechina medameh klapi, the higher seichel, so it has the elements of dimyan, because dimyan tzarich liot, we're valley dimyan, that's what a human being is. Where the prophets had a clarified, cleansed sense of dimyan. Like we've already established, nevuah was on account of this avodah of the yad. which is music, by selecting the good points from within the negative points. Then we're able to subjugate the ruach ra that is mixed in and extricated and entrenched rather within the ruach toiva, the ruach toiva that's entrenched within the ruach ra. This is the bechina of the eitz hadas toiva ra. Everything is mixed up, and what we need is the eitz hachaim. What we need is the process of being able to live in a world of eitz hadas toiva ra and to select bit by bit. And again, like the Rebbe is pointing out, this is an avodah. It's not something that happens on its own. You can even learn a lot about it. If we're not actively focused on it, like anything else, we have to be not mesiach das, right? We have to mamish. It has to be an avodah that we work on. Means if a person is davening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to help us work on things, this has to be included. Hashem, help me look at the world with an ayin taiva. It's an incredibly difficult avodah to anybody who's tried. At least it is for me. It's a real avodah. It's no less an avodah than taivas achila, shmir seinayim. These are avodas, right? No person's just going to be a shleimer einayim, right? It's not possible. There are strategies. A person has to stay conscious. A person has to be tachbulis tasam l'chama and really daven about it and really think about it and avoid certain places and certain circumstances. Right? The tachbulis tasam l'chama. This, says the Rebbe, is not only no less, it's probably more. Because it's all pervasive. It's every single second of your life. With every data point that comes to you, you're doing selection. You're selecting the toiv from the ra. Meaning it's like trying to perceive of all of life as a keyboard. That's any experience that you have. It's like you're sitting on stage and a piano is being rolled into you, and they put it right next to you. Even if you know how to play piano, you don't know how to play piano, at least this amount of piano, you know that you can't press all the keys at once and you have to select them in particular combinations to make melodies, right? I think everybody knows. So in comes the piano and they roll it over to you. Here's your avodah. It's always, every circumstance, every relationship, every interaction, everything. And it's a chachma, it's a real chachma. And that's what the Rebbe is trying to train us into, to select the ruach toiva from within the ruach ra and to produce melodies.
Yeah. It's like gravity, but spiritual gravity, meaning it's a force that's ever present, and unless you lift your limbs, unless you make
doesn't activate it,
design,
right?
You're gonna be.
That's right. You have to actively work against it, right? Work with it. B'diuk. Yeah. Okay. V'zeh shekasav. Now we come to a new remes in a pasuk in Mishlei. Mi Allah Shemayim v'yerad. The pasuk says, "Who is it that Allah Shemayim v'yerad, that went up to Shemayim and descended? Mi asaf ruach b'chafnav. Who has gathered spirit ruach in his hands? Mi tzar mayim b'simla. Who has gathered water together in a garment? Mi hakim kol afsei arts. Who established all the afsei arts, like the extensions of the land? What we're going to see is a reference to feet, like the width of the land. And of course a reference to the singularity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No human being can do any of these things. HaKadosh Baruch Hu can do things. Says the Rebbe, everything that we learned is hinted to in this pasuk. Mi Allah Shemayim v'yera ze b'chinas ha-menagin. This is the menagin. Ki ha-menagin hu oila v'yared b'negina. That's such a beautiful line if you learn it metaphorically, right? You know what it means to be a menagin? A menagin is a person who is oile v'yared b'negina. Who his aliyas and yuridus are a melody. Oile v'yared b'negina. Somebody has to make a song with these words, right? This is what it means to be a menagin be'emes. Not a person who knows how to play guitar, or even violin. A menagin be'emes is a person who knows how to play the instrument called life. Knows how to be oile v'yared b'negina. Those three words, it's worth the whole sefer, I think, just for those three words. Even though he means more literally, I'm making a remez on his words, he's talking about the hand, but based on the remez of the way that we've learned it, it means more than that. Oile v'yared b'negina. Ki tzarich lalos v'leirid b'midas hanimin. Kifi mishkal ashir kedei lekabetz haruach. You have to be very, very clear on, okay, which strings am I playing? How many strings am I playing together? Is it one string? Am I doing a harmony, 2 strings? Am I doing a chord, 3 strings? Am I doing a complex chord, 4 strings? Right? Like a person needs to be an expert in all of this. in order to select the particular notes that are necessary for this particular melody. Vizeh, mi, and then the pasuk continues, so that's mi Allah shamayim v'yera. That's the aspect of oil v'yored when playing a melody. Then, mi asaf ruach b'chafnav. What's b'chafnav? Chafnav means its hands. B'chafnav mamish shehema yadayim. Mi asaf ruach b'chafnav. That's exactly what we do when we're oil v'yored on an instrument. We are selecting the ruach toiva from the ruach ra b'chafnav with our yadayim. Kisham, right? She'im ayadayim. Kisham shirish haruach kaniskal el. She'ikar b'chinas haruach hu biyadayim. She'sham pikdonis haruach kaniskal, like we said, biyad chav gedruchi. Then the pasuk continues, "Says mitzarar mayim basimla." Who tied up waters in a garment, the garment of the ocean that contains the water. Mayim b'chinas leiv. Mayim is an aspect of the heart. Kamashikasav shivchi kamayim libech. Let my heart be poured out before you like water. On account of Allah Shemayim V'Yera playing guitar, Asaf Ruach B'Chafnav, gathering the Ruchais, then Memela that leads to Mitzar Mayim B'Simla, Hutzar Mayim B'Simla Sheshomer Alev Shalei Yishlat Alav HaMedameh. I guard my heart, which is the Ruach, which is in constant state of being fought over and battled over by what? The neshama on the one hand, the nefesh on the other hand. I guard my leiv, I guard my mayim, I guard the waters of my heart, that I shouldn't be influenced by the nefesh, and rather I should be under the influence of the holy dimin of the neshama that can give me this incredible imagination that even when I have a yerida, I'm connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's an avodah here for me, this is part and parcel of the journey. And akol tov, I pick myself up and I do the avodah necessary and I carry on. And ba'aliyah, I recognize there's no, like we said, baki baratzai. I'm not settling. There's more avodah to do. I'm never there. Baki balacha, to know how to walk, to know how to journey. V'zeh heikim kol afsei aretz. And then the pasuk ends, who is it that has established kol afsei aretz? Shal yedei zehu meikim chinas raglin hamalubish b'zeh olam. That enables a person to pick up on the hints, going all the way back to the beginning of Torah and Dalet, right? The hints that are scattered throughout all of this worldliness, which was called raglin, because it's the netzach and hoid that are manifest within this world. And so this pasuk contains the whole thing. Afsei, b'chinas raglin. Afsei means feet. The angels that Yecheskel saw took him through waters that were covering his ankles. Basically, what we're learning is that on account of playing nigunim with our yad, the medameh is machnia, is subjugated, and then a person is able to be zeicha to zikarin. Which again, zikarin is not seichel. Zikarin is also, it's a dimyon. But that's all we need, right? That holy dimyon that can enable us, even when we're living in a world of concrete information facts, to be able to remain connected to this other realm. And to sort of like superimpose it onto this realm. And to play that game of David.
A question.
Yeah.
So, Rabbi Yaakov said that we can choose to be influenced by our neshama or our nefesh. So the two questions spring to mind off the back of that. Number one, is it that we are our nefesh and our neshama and our ruach. So when we're saying we can be swayed by, it suggests that, are you saying where do we choose to, which bit of ourselves do we choose to occupy? Is the question, one question, i.e. we can move towards our neshama aspect. Second part is nefesh isn't necessarily bad. Nefesh, so an articulation of actually what is nefesh, how does, in the same way that we're supposed to elevate or bring our Kodesh Baruch Hu into Olam Hazeh, how do we bring consciousness of Hashem into ourselves when we're occupying our nefesh zone? And then another question, sorry to throw so many questions, but is this actually, are we actually just one entity that is if you put ourselves through a prism, can you throw onto a screen, nefesh?
So that's your first question, though. Now you're suggesting an answer to the first question. Right? But is that related to the first question? It could be. I don't think it's the right one. So let's address them. Right? Let's address those. So the first thing is they're both really, really excellent questions. The first way of thinking about it, at least the way that I understand it, is that from the Bechin of Tzelem Elokim, our nefesh ruach neshama chai yechida is to us, right, what the olamais of Asiya, Yitzira, Bria, Atzilus are to the Ein Sof, right? Are they godly, or they're manifestations of godliness? So what's the chilek? Constriction. Right? We are infinitely beyond our nefesh ruach neshama chai yechida, because the gaps are ever growing in measure, and you can learn that from the parallel to Doimim Tzameach Chai Medaber. And look how much consciousness grows and expands cumulatively, right, between the Doimim and the Tzameach. Very little difference, right? And they're both inanimate, right? So one has like some element of vitality. And then the plant and an animal, I mean, is a mega, leap, right? A quantum leap. And then from animals to human beings, it's a whole different world, right? And then from human beings to malachim, right? Or, like higher entities. Godliness is in all of those things. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a mechanism where there are fundamental limits as you get to the lower elements, right? A yid is a chilek el kamima. A yid is fundamentally rooted in yichida shebenefesh. That's what a yid is. And even beyond that, that's the kutza da ois yud that gives us a little intimation of the ein sofiyut of what a human being is. Beyond that, I cease existing. So to speak about a yid, right, myself or ourselves in any meaningful way, I have to start from the point of yichida. Beyond that, I'm God, right? And that's not what we are, right? We're human beings. Beyond that is we stop having a meaningful sense of identity. So we start from the kutza da ois yud, right, which is the element of yichida, and then my experience, the totality of me, which, again, is a little bit dark because Yechida is mispashit all the way down. The Ein Sof is mispashit all the way down. Experience is a sliding spectrum of the more conscious parts of me, the more activated parts of me that are more similar to the ideal nature of my being, right, which is my godliness, right, which is my Chelek El Kamimal, the Ein Sofiyut of me, manifest in its most pristine and most, like its earliest, most seminal form in the level of Yechida. Am I being drawn up there? Or am I living out of the more constricted parts of me?
Okay.
Is that?
Yeah, I guess one could rephrase it. Are we drawing our nefesh up to our neshama?
That's our second question. Wait. That's the second question, right? So just, this is the first question. Okay. Yeah, that's clear?
Yeah. I think so,
yeah, okay. The second question is exactly the point. We're not moving between nefesh and neshama, meaning to say I'm leaving my nefesh behind, and wherever I am on the spectrum, I am bringing all of the chalakim with me there. If I'm in nefesh, I'm taking the functionality of my neshama, my ruach, which in a very basic form is my thinking and my feeling, and I'm doing that through the prism of my nefesh. The nefesh is just pure action, right? So it doesn't mean now I'm in nefesh, so I literally am a automaton, right? I'm using my brain and I'm using my feelings, but through my nefesh. The flip side, which is what we're talking about now, and that's why we keep on speaking Gesundheit about medama de kedusha, is when I'm able to move up to seichel, which is neshama. There's a dimyon shebeseichel. That means I elevate my nefesh, which is the capacity for dimyon, because it's unfeeling and and I elevate it up to my neshama, which, like we're learning here, but it gets a little bit more complicated, can actually transcend the neshama, can actually take me into a place where my neshama ends here and the Koach HaDimyon, the kedusha, can take over beyond seichel, whereas the Koach HaMedameh, the sitra achra, is far below seichel, right? And so that's the way that, at least in my mind, I'm thinking about it. They're battling over ruach, and that's really where the battle takes place, is over the feelings. But whichever side of the spectrum you're on, you're going to either drag neshama, ruach, down into nefesh, or you're going to elevate ruach along with nefesh up to neshama. And we have all of these different layers of our identity in us, it's important to know about them so we can know where we're situated on the level of our wooden box, right? So I always know what's really going on beyond the surface. On the surface, halavai should be shining because we should be in neshama, but I always need to know, but at the same time, I always need to know that I have a golden box underneath, that none of these things are really be'emes me, right? What I really am, tamid, is the element of yichida. It's just, am I living out of that consciousness, or am I living out of neshama, or am I living out of nefesh? Ruach, you don't really live out of, because it's already on one side or the other side. It's the beginning of klipas noiga. Right? It's that's what the tzaddikim referred to when they said there's no staying the same. You're either going up or you're going down. Right? That's what they're referring to. There's no ruach. You don't live out of ruach. Ruach is either anchored, tethered to nefesh, in which case it's the candle from the right side up, and so the wick is below and the flame, or it's the flame of the wick from above, and it's tethered and anchored above, and thereby drawing up the nefesh and ruach above, which is why ner, right, is either nefesh and ruach or neshama and ruach. That's a ner. It's either going to be a ner below, right, so the wick is anchored below and then the flame, or it's going to be neshama ruach, the wick above, but also the flame manifesting below. And that's how I intend to present these things. Yeah, is that clear? I think it's very helpful because then a person's able to identify within themselves, not like just Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara. It builds out a whole maracha. This is a really important part of the course where we go through all of this and present this on the level of understanding what a human being is, what are the components that we contain. And you can check in with yourself, like, where am I living out of? Am I in nefesh? Am I in neshama? You know, and it just simplifies it. And then you can, you know, on a tefillah level, we're davening to Hashem, help me stay in neshama. Help me stay in that higher madriga.
Can one get in touch with one's chaya and yichida?
Yeah. Again, be'ezishu derech. That has to do with transcending your mind, and that has to do with meditation. That has to do with with holy imagination, right? Koach HaMedameh in a higher way. But I believe there are ways of transcend again, because once we define neshama as thought, then anything that transcends thought is transcending neshama. You're tapping into higher experiences, altered states of consciousness, like we're learning, might give a person a taste of that which is beyond our wakeful seichel. But on a regular wakeful experience, it's nefesh ruach neshama. That's sort of naran, and that's where we live out of.
If music is such a powerful tool to get your Madama in check, why couldn't Avil do it?
Why should an Avil do? We don't want an Avil to be a Madama.
No, music is meant to elevate your Madama. So
we don't want an Avil to be elevated. We don't want an Avil to be elevated.
Why?
Why? Because an Avil is supposed to mourn. Right? An Avil is not wearing tefillin because tefillin are mesameach halev. Yeah, that's what I mean. Right? Meaning.
And you've got the whole Avila sort of 3 weeks, and then you've got now like this.
Yeah, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to experience life. You know, the difficulty of life. There are moments that are supposed to be difficult. We're not saying that.
It's not difficult. It's making sure your Madama doesn't get unchecked and you know, and there's no avocado learn either.
Right, but remember, Chazal say, Shlomo HaMelech says, Ta'iv leches lebeis Avel milaleches lebeis Mishta. What did they mean? We have to be careful with the way that we're using the word dibyan. From the standpoint of the music of the Beis Mishta, what's the positive element of that music, right? And its ideal form. I can bring a person to remember Alma Da'aseh, Halavai. Let's say a person goes to a bar mitzvah and the DJ's playing like Yosef Kardush and Gewalt, you know, and it becomes a beautiful kumsitz. Halavai. So let's say, right? That's Toiv Lalachas Beis Mishta, and a mamish puts everyone in touch with Alma Da'aseh. Chazal are saying that a Beis Aval does that memela. Lehepech. And that's what I'm saying. It doesn't take away from the simcha. Simcha doesn't mean that you have a smile on your face and your heart is happy. Simcha means you're in touch with the truth. It's very important. Mitzvah gadol is b'simcha tamid. So, you know, you have to just paint a clown smile on your face and pretend to be happy all the time. It's not what it is. Simcha means I am plugged into the tachlis. A person who's baki b'shayv is not happy. He's in Yerida. He just had a massive Yerida. He's not, if he's happy, there's something off. That's already, we said, Echtava Ashav, like it's inauthentic Jew, it's not going to work. Shivron Leiv. It has to be Shivron Leiv. Rabbi Nachman said in Sichas Ram Be'emes, a Breslover Chassid should be B'Shivron Leiv the whole day. He's worried that Shivron Leiv is going to go into Atzva, so he said be B'Simcha the whole day, and then for 1 hour, his supposed to be B'Shivron Leiv. So we have to get our terminology right in terms of what we're actually looking to do. I would say lehepech, a base avel, right, is a better reminder of the Almud Aseh than a base mishta, even if a person has really holy, elevated music. Because the base avel is a very real place, a cemetery is a very real place. So people don't like going so much because it's uncomfortable. It forces them to remember that this is not forever. People don't like to think about that. I do, because I'm an interesting cat. But people don't like to really think about that. Like, we're going to actually die. Like, actually, like this is not forever. It's just hard for our brain to comprehend that. So it's uncomfortable truth. And people who want to live their lifestyle don't want to think about that. But to walk into a base aval, Chazal say, try to go to a base aval. Yiskal yoyim amisa, right? Like the Gemara tells us, after a person tries this and tries that, says Krishna, the last thing is, remember the truth. Remember the truth. It's just we become so attached to this meat suit, that like it's just hard for us to imagine anything else. But if you think about it, we have this infinite neshama that's smushed into this form. It's incredibly traumatic for the neshama to come down into a body. Imagine the neshama chelik alakamimal is limited to 5 feet, however many inches I am, and has only 5 fingers and not 2 trillion, what a symptom that is. It's absurd. It's just all we know is 5 fingers, so we think it's normal. And it works for Alam Hazeh because we were outfitted perfectly to be able to interact with. I mean, where are all my other fingers? Where am I? I'm so limited. Ani akol, ani lo klum. Arein sof, lavush v'guf. So, the neshama wants to shatter this. It's so hard to be. We're here on a mission. We're here for a reason. You read the Litzarech Aliyah.
This is what, because like Yaakov didn't have Nebuah, he was mourning Yosef for all those years. Right? It's still connected. The music is there for that. So why?
Could be there are 2 different forms. I have to think. You're asking a very good question, Truth. I have to think a little bit more about it. Not just answering, off the top of my head. It could be there's a chilik, but between there's different forms of accessing the Almud Aseh. Sometimes through more overt simcha, sometimes through more of a serious form, and it could be both have their play. It could be that itself, in a more meta sense, is part of the melody of Aliyah and Yerida. Like, within La'advaka Machshavta Ba'almud Aseh, there's Rochel and Shoiv.
The journey.
Right? In and of itself. What we're suggesting, again, on a meta level, is that Oilav Yarid Benegina. Right? There are ways of connecting to meaning and truth, Bein Ba'aliyah, Bein B'Yerida. Either through using the mechanism of Nigina in and of itself, which has a Bechina of the Yerida, right? Or by experiencing the Yerida and getting reminded in a painful way that that this world is temporary, and that getting caught up with this worldly considerations to the point that I become ois mensch from things that are going on in this world that are not really nogeya to my nitzchi. Like I said, that's nefesh. I want to rise to neshama. I don't want to be in reactivity. That's dimyan. I want to live in responsiveness. I want to be rooted in a higher perspective where there's a sense of detachment, not in the Buddhist sense where I just detach from everything, but in the sense of actively participating in my life with a healthy sense of distance, so that there's the space between stimulus and reaction where I can pause and I can think and I can contemplate and I can remain aloof and removed. It could be there are 2 different channels, 2 different paths.
I suppose with this, people they can use that as a bigger manipulation.
Mamish.
Talking about,
Totally. Totally. So many people, people lose their parents, and then that's what gets them really thinking. I know people like that. All of a sudden you're forced into an experience of Shiva, and you start realizing like life really matters, and then they become very serious about like taking on Mishnayos, and they start learning, and then because first they're doing it, and then their whole life can change. It's possible. So there are different routes, different paths. Let's just finish this last line. Like we said, this is again perhaps one path toward putting us in touch with the holy Koach HaMedameh, like Jeremy said, drawing our nefesh up to our neshama. Then I can pick up on the remazim that are everywhere, which means there's meaning everywhere, which means there's no lashon hara, because it's all lashon toiv. It's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu attempting to communicate His love for me, and then my avos Hashem is complete. Which is godly energy, which are the feet of holiness, which are enclosed within everything in this world. Vezehu mihekim kol afsei aretz is a reference to feet, shemegalu umekim, on account of mi Allah shemayim v'yerad, oil v'yared, mi asav ruach b'chafnav, mi tzar mayim esimla, protecting the lay, which is the ruach from the dimyon of the nefesh. And then finally it ends with mi hekim kol afsei aretz shemalu umekim b'chinas ragli akadusha hamalu b'ashem zeh ha'olam kinis kolal. A person who lives with this consciousness, whether because of Beis Mishteh, or like Rabbi Yehuda is pointing out, it needs a little bit more thought, Beis Avel, right? But either, a person who's in touch with Almada Aseh is going to be able to pick up on the Ramazim that are scattered throughout all of life. There's nothing that person will encounter that doesn't have something meaningful to say to him. If it has something meaningful to say to me, it's already meaningful. If it's already meaningful, it's l'chatchila, because where would I be in life without this remez? I need this remez. I need this experience. It's supposed to teach me something. There's data here way beyond what I think is happening. I have to contemplate what's really the dynamic of this interaction. What's really, again, that question, what's really going on? And then life is a curriculum. So then, bein ba'aliyah, bein b'yirida, me'asek shemayim shamata, v'hatziyah sha'ol hinaka. Okay, as Hashem will hopefully attempt and do our best to finish Torah and Dalet tomorrow. We'll begin next week with Torah and Hey as we move toward Vav, which is, like we said, the Shavuos Torah, and really quite likely that we'll be in the sugya, because it's pretty long. It's extremely long. Okay, so Be'ezus Hashem, it's incredible. Have a wonderful day. האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני